working on, and that basically implements the idea that I talked about. So let's start with something very simple. So the hello world of every React component is basically a counter, right? So actually, just do a little page refresh, and so we can create a counter like this. Actually, just one more. Okay, let me do this again. Actually, that's just the wrong model. Okay, so create a counter, and now the AI basically generates a counter on the fly that I can interact with. So I can increment it, click the button, right? And the AI basically answers directly and updates the UI. And I can click it multiple times, right? So this is just like a basic interaction, so not very interesting. Let's do something more interesting. For example, create a to-do list. And here we have our to-do list. So now I can do basic stuff like buy apples, buy oranges, and all of this is just auto-generated, so there's no pre-configured templates or something like that. And I can still prompt it, right? So I can say, for example, add emojis and add a few more items. And here I have my items. So all of this generated. So this is just toy examples, right? So not super interesting. So I want to show you now something more productive, right? So how we can integrate that with some other tools and do actually something productive with this. And for this I'm changing to a slightly slower model, but also slightly better. And what I want to show you now is a Notion page. So I have here a Notion page, which is a sales report. It's unfortunately not a real sales report, maybe next year, but this year not. And so this is just a page with information. And then I have here a linear. So this is, for those of you who don't know linear, it's like Jira, but in good. And it's basically the issue tracker where you can track, maintain issues, and that kind of to-do lists, right? And now what I can do is basically ask it to show me my Notion pages. And initially this will take a few seconds because it's like a cold start. Later on will be a little bit faster. And it's going now and basically fetching my Notion pages, right? So what Cloudflare did here is basically execute some code in Sandbox to fetch my Notion pages. And as you can see here, I have my sales report along with a couple of other pages, right? And now what I can do is basically visualize my sales report as a dashboard. Make it brutalist style. This is just to make it a little bit more appealing. And now Cloudflare will do the same again. We'll write some code to generate, to fetch basically the data, and then generate a dashboard for my sales report. And here we got it. So yeah, it looks nice, right? Just no predefined templates, just generated on the fly. And
this plural intelligence. Okay, so what changed? I guess we could start for something very simple. So before we had passive software like Google Calendar, which is becoming less and less passive, but still it's something that it is. And then we have the superhuman, which is basically an integration within your scope. So it creates categories and helps you reply, etc., etc. So it creates a whole system that helps you to have a more proactive way of being on top of your calendar invites, whatever it is. So this is kind of an example of it. And then we have another one, which this is all created by Nano Banana. but I really like R2D2 Star Wars, so I decided to create one which kind of begins like sort of the thinking and acting of it, like the agency and then the automation, and what is the difference between both of them, because the automation itself is something that we still use it, but with the agency can become much more easily. For example, I have Lindy, which is my assistant. She's very nice, she helps me a lot with making sure that I don't forget anything urgent, specifically emails in this case, and so on. So this is the jump. I would say that this is the jump from UI, AI, or I call it AI, but yeah, like the era that we called this, and then we have the agentic, which comes in and end. So the interface era is something very static, or static in the sense of the experience, I would say, and very layered based or less layered based, like that, just clicks like buttons and so on. And then we have the AI era, which is the response with prompts, which is more or less what we were talking about before. And then we have the agency era, which still leaves the human in the loop, and I will explain more or less what that means in practice. And then basically is when AI stopped asking as much questions as they used to and becomes something much more agentic, much more automatic within our experience as users. So what makes a system agentic? I would guess that it starts with how we initiate this experience or this flow of experience. So it gets from the X without being like explicitly asked because you already gave the authorization for that. And then the thought process is like how it thinks through each step of what it's building, like thinking before acting, so making sure that we understand why it's doing something that it's doing. And then we have the autonomy, which is it works independently. So with everything from the previous ones, we know that they can do the job because it actually said why it is doing what it's doing. And then the transparency, which is something that I believe that is very important to create trust in this process with users, which is to explain its actions and what it's doing. It's not enough to just say that we are using AI. It's basically like you need to give it some kind of agency, and you need to have it some. So another part, and we can see like before, like I was saying, like the designing of the streams and designing of decisions, which basically means the behavior behind what is doing, not only the user, but also us as employees. What are we giving to this agent or these agents, these multiple agency within the scope of our products or not? And that is basically the difference and how we need to measure the risks, the priorities, basically the impacts of what we are building and so on. So this is more or less how I would say, in my experience, an agentic works or cycle would say. It gets to the perception without saying.
When the user clicks a couple of times in quick succession, we can just pull all the actions from the queue, and then we have an LLM that basically does the UI modification. And the LLM has also access to memory, a virtual DOM, we'll talk about this in a bit, and a sandbox to run some code. And what the LLM basically does is it generates changes for the UI. And these changes then get into a validation step, and once they are validated, then we basically emit the patch to the front end, and then apply it in the front end. So with patch, I basically mean the change in the UI.
It can be. But then this is what I use for the boundaries. So what I consider or what I can do for each section. Sorry, I forgot I had the mic. Here, like the high confidence based low risk. So what do I consider based on the features, functionalities, logic, behaviors that I want to add to a product? Is I go through this and see it. For example, the format text organized file. Yeah, okay, do it. It's fine. Nothing will happen. The suggested request approval. Yeah, you can. It's like to send important emails. Maybe I will be a bit hesitant, like I was saying previously.
Platform. It's been the top one performer in the Stack Overflow metrics. in the survey that we sent on people that learn to code. They're really using the platform. And just to give you an idea of all the products that we have, of course I'm not going to go through all of them because there is pizza. But just to give you a few, it's Workers is the one that I was talking about recently. But we also have, for example, browser rendering API, which you probably saw if you follow Cloudflare, or if you have any keywords in X. You probably saw a lot of people that were a bit confused, saying, I thought Cloudflare was meant to protect you against bots, and then suddenly you have an endpoint where you can crawl any page in the world for bots. It's like, which one is it? Are you the bad guys now? Like, what is going on? And the truth is, yes, there is an endpoint that you can use to, if you want to scrape, for example, the content of a website, you can do it with Cloudflare nowadays. But if the website owner doesn't want bots to scrape that data, we'll respect that. So that's the caveat with other providers. They will try to scrape it anyway. So going back to the portfolio of the AI that we have, in terms of training a model, what we can offer is R2, which is our the equivalent of an S3 storage. So if you have a lot of data to train, we don't charge for ingress, so you can store all the results and the artifacts of the model training, and that's going to be cheaper than storage in other places. We also have a vector database, so if you have, for example, to do this a little bit technical, so around 20%.
Prossimo paragraph. Next stop, Piazza Commercio.
And that's pretty much it. There we go. So it created this piece of JavaScript. This is a worker. So this is all you need to do to deploy to 335 cities around the world. This code is not gonna, it scales to 0. It means that if you're not using it, you're not paying for it. It just, if you suddenly become Shopify and have 300 trillion requests, as they do, they are customers of ours, it would also scale to that size. So it's very cool for agents where you don't know how many agents are going to be doing how many requests. So now I want to deploy this. So we are our own CLI, which is deploy. And I need to pass that into the model. Let's put it here. Yes, install dependencies. So the idea with this is that we don't need to, yes, because I'm not in the right folder, I need to go to Workers Pizza. Here we go. Again, the idea with this is that we have a CLI, a tool that would allow us to deploy this code to 335 cities around the world. And I have to log in, which is, well,